Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the CM Cosman channel. This time with an interview with a fellow fan of this channel. This was just a spur of the moment improvised thing, but I like reaching out to fans. People like reaching out to me, and we have Theo here. So yes, long story short, everybody, here we are having an interesting call and conversation about ostensibly about internet culture and the rise of the occult bros, but I think it's going to be a really meandering and enlightening conversation nevertheless. Take it away, Theo. How would you like to introduce yourself to the hundreds of viewers of this video?
Absolutely. So, hey everyone, I'm Theo. I like CM Cosman's work. I've used his work on a lot of my memes online, and honestly I thought he was, when he messaged me through IG, I thought he was like a fed or something, because this guy has so much influence online, and the fact that someone with so much influence is also culturally literate enough to understand what if altist brain rot and occult brain rot is amazing, is remarkable. So we got to get started with getting one shot by the occult bros. Yeah.
This by the way, would you like to promote your own meme channel?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I would like to promote my little meme page. And I'm also on Twitter. My handle is Tardo Raptor.
Okay.
There as well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be presenting all of these to our viewers, and thank you for considering me so influential.
Yeah, dude, you are. Like, my cousin knows about you.
I think the book All Tomorrows itself has another life. And it's like far more known than I am, because my channel has got like a small but dedicated flock of maybe 50,000 subscribers. But videos other people make about All Tomorrows get millions. And like personally on this channel, the top video still is a video of me popping seed gourds with 100,000 views. So it's a strange phenomenon, but I'm actually secretly thankful for it, because as we have seen over and over, this kind of shattering light of fame can be taxing on the unprepared mind. And
absolutely. And also I think another thing is that what you mentioned about the work takes a life of its own. I think that's true for a lot of the occult stuff, because when you go through like the actual esoteric stuff, right, from, for example, the Canaanite god, their pantheon was pretty small. I was watching the Esoterica channel. Their pantheon was fairly small, and they were like henotheists, wherein they did not deny the existence of other gods in different areas. But Yahweh was the god of Israel and Judah, and eventually it just became the god of everything, because it was not allocated to just one region.
So, well, I mean, in life in general, I'm just gonna zoom out a bit, and in life in general, things from the background have a way of like coming in from completely random, distant places and suddenly occupying the center stage. And I think it's one of the inherent unpredictabilities of life. I mean, you could argue same goes for politics, it goes for religion, it might even go for like larger forces in history like wars and conflict. But and throughout history, you see people preparing for an eventuality, but usually that's not where you get hit from, and something completely new happens. And I think that's the neat and scary thing about history in general. But
and I think you can't even another thing is that you can't really predict it, because I think
yes, definitely,
if you look at like 30% of the US population, right, they believe in the rapture. They literally believe supporting Israel is going to bring forth the second coming of Christ. And the same kind of like and although you don't see as much of that in the left or the modern like socially liberal, you still see this overwhelming idea that the American empire is going to collapse, or something like, oh, the civilization is going to collapse. And I think collapse is this, or apocalypse, of course, it means like a new beginning, but because of movies and all like science fiction, we think of collapse as though it is going to be this catharsis when it'll just be like a meteor strike, or like someone, but no, it's slow. You have like, and we are part of this carbon pulse, wherein we wouldn't have these many people if it weren't for like the Haber-Bosch process. And it's like a bias in our thinking as well, because we think every just my dad, or like my grandfather, he grew up in a rural area. My father, he moved to the city and he had two kids, me and my younger brother, right?
Yeah.
And you think, because at least my dad's bias is like the 60 years that he's lived in his life, and for him, he thinks that is just how it has always been, but it's not. But it hasn't, because just a few years before him, my grandfather probably didn't have that opportunity, and probably I wouldn't have that opportunity because I probably cannot afford most of my shit. Yeah,
I mean, it's a similar story all over the world, but I'm gonna unpack the collapse and the American bit a little.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I think anybody who genuinely thinks the US is gonna collapse is like honestly deluded. I mean, you guys over there can have a really hard time, and no one would deny it, but it's not going the way of Rome anytime soon. In fact, I think the United States has something like a complete dominance now in Europe and the Middle East, and and the technologies everybody is using are made and directed over there. I think save maybe for China, there's really no competitor to the US. As the expression goes, the rumors of its demise are greatly exaggerated. This is not to say, of course, it's not going through a weird time. And yes, standards of living are falling, but it's not the same as like going the way of the Romans. And there have been economic crises before. I mean, you had the Dust Bowl and the 1930s catastrophic conditions back then. You know, they didn't even have like health insurance back then. If you died, you just fucking died. And so there's that to say on one end. On the other hand, as you just said, sometimes it is a slower burn, and people want things to, like, that will never happen, nothing new under the sun, nothing ever happens. Yeah.
Nothing ever happens, bro.
But it does.
The arc of history just bends towards nothing ever happening. Like, TikTok gets banned, TikTok comes back, nothing happened.
Well, I think that might have been like a really smart political move and an election, like literally bread and circuses, happy ending.
There's psyops
everybody
everywhere, bro. Like every single thing is just, and what you spoke about, like the American collapse and everything, people just our understanding of culture is so intertwined with the American view. I mean, I grew up in a third world country. And for us, at least growing up, I used to think, every country has an Independence Day. I think that's probably one of the foundation of any country. And then you learn more about history. You learn more about there's like a world outside your little region. There's people who've conquered others. And there's people who've never been conquered. Like Ethiopia never got conquered. Thailand never got conquered. And even the movies
never got conquered.
Yeah, it's like you go to fucking Mars and that guy speaks in perfect American English, bro, which is crazy. And it's ubiquitous.
I mean, it's kind of tainted culture, but it was far more pervasive when I was growing up. And I mean, it's no secret. I grew up in, let us say, a developing country, Turkey. And I remember this distinctly. Heck, I was even like daydreaming about it yesterday. And now we're talking about it. I went to see Independence Day, the original movie, in a theater. The one where the aliens invade Earth and Bill Pullman blows them up. And it's a really great film. I think it stood the test of time. During the screening, like we are in Turkey and we are in Istanbul, when the mothership was blown up, everybody in the audience, and this was a big theater, everybody like rose and like clapped and applauded and cheered. And this is something you never see Turkish audiences do, like not even in the most dramatic film, but here they were cheering a fictional alien invasion, the defeat of a fictional alien invasion in Independence Day. I think that was like at least the like mid to late 1990s were the high water mark of American culture across the world, because briefly they had a technological edge, they had a logistical edge. And I mean, where I'm growing up, it was like in the 90s up into like the mid 2000s, it was common to scoff at local Turkish films because those are badly made, the acting is fake, blah blah blah. Now, after 1 or 1.5 generations, you see people actually like revering and idolizing those Turkish movies with the like wooden acting and the weird cuts and the actors who played. And I'm like, sorry, I'm like running off on a tangent, but there was an actor, he's a great guy, by the way. There's an action movie actor named Cüneyt Arkın, and he played in like a lot of swords and sandals, like fight movies, historic epics and stuff. But in all the films, like you could see the swords were made out of wood and like the props were like made out of papier-mâché and even clay in some cases. And the sets were all fake and phony. And when I was growing up, this guy was like, Cüneyt Arkın, ha ha ha. Like you could say, if a car was badly made, you could say that, it's like a Cüneyt Arkın movie car or something like that. Years later, when Cüneyt Arkın sadly passed away, he was a legend. And like the outpouring of love and stuff was something else. So in this long way, what I'm getting at is, I think, yes, we have a perception of like an Americanized view of the world, but in a lot of local corners, actually this sort of national or at least a local perception or a local appreciation of things was kind of subsumed. And now when things are changing a little, they're coming back up, and it's rising up as like pride in the best of cases, and like
it's also romantic in a way, like
the past, exactly.
And like that's the same way I feel about like Bollywood. Like growing up, I didn't really watch any Hollywood movies much. I think the only one that I've watched was like Stuart Little or like Jurassic Park, just the big ones. And then now when I look back, I see those movies with a kind of like in a way that like I'm reminiscing about those good old days. It's got this. I think it's the same reason why Wakaliwood. I think it's called Who Killed Captain Alex. I think it's a really
Captain Alex. Yeah.
That one. Like people kind of yearn for this simplicity where people were just making movies for the love of it. And I think you can probably see that in the, is his name Rene?
The name eludes me, but do go on. Is it the Wakaliwood guy?
The name that you just mentioned, the Turkish action star.
Oh, Cüneyt Arkın. Yeah.
Cüneyt Arkın. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you see so much of like slop, right? Just content slop with cape shit and all that stuff. You kind of and some of it's like CGI, it's pure. Like I kind of did not like when Scorsese says like a theme park movie, but I completely understand what he means
with
because
Marvel
it's
films.
Like it's just slop for the sake of slop, just bringing in some actor from like some past movie and just consumerism for its own sake. But when you see Hollywood and this guy is having fun making that movie where this just like random effects, like you yearn for that simplicity, and I think that's people are going back to that, and people kind of like it.
I mean, of course, when we remember old movies, we also remember our childhood. But yeah, I mean, going back at Wakaliwood. By the way, the name of the Turkish action star Cüneyt Arkın, let me spell it for audiences. It's Cuneyt and Arkin. And yeah, that's that. I mean, I think there's also a kind of like, now I think a two-layer appreciation of culture has emerged. And I mean, for most people, when there are movies to watch in the Cineplex with a date or with your family and kids, and these are usually still the slop films, and the slop is slop, but you kind of build a day around it, and they're secretly selling that whole experience. And then there are movies you watch on your laptop or at home, and these could be the more like intellectually stimulating films. And then there are movies you watch on your smartphone and just like laugh at. And so I think it's like the media consumption, it's not a ray of light, but a spectrum, and like that is expanding and stuff like that. But
but I also feel at the same time, I do feel like the backlash against like content slop, like Marvel stuff, right? I think in a way it kind of emerged from like a really classist lens, because I think the people who watch these A24 films, you feel a little kind of like elitism, because you feel, these people don't know how cool Midsommar is, how cool like Robert Eggers films are or something. And then I can somewhat like understand. At the same time, the Avengers is huge in India and like Pakistan. Everyone loves it. Like you go to like any village there, they will tell you exactly Spider-Man's like real name. Like they would love it. And and so you see this kind of classism coming up. And I think there was a report wherein like A24 has like crafted this image of this studio that makes films for people who are like kind of want to feel more higher IQ,
who go to Whole Foods for groceries.
Exactly. But at the same time, I think but there's two, as you said, there's like two kinds of liking to culture. There's some movies that you just watch for the slop, like Marvel movies, but there's some movies that you watch like A24 where you want to feel as though you're the smarter person. I'm repeating myself because I kind of like forgot what I was trying to say, but it is still, ultimately it is your content consumption machine. You consume content. Everything is content, and I think that's okay. because if everything is content, anyone can become a creator. And I think that has democratized this creator ecosystem. Anyone can make stuff. And if people want to consume it, they consume it and they like it. That's like your work, bro. I'm not saying it's, you're an artist, but like your work takes the life of its own. And you cannot control how people like react to your work. Like that, the author kind of dies in a way, and that's okay.
No, that definitely is real. On a side note, I personally think, at least for that film, I have a personal gripe against Midsommar.
Yeah,
Midsommar is personally, but also objectively, worse than any Marvel film. Like I ironically believe that it's white people who go to Whole Foods kind of slop. It's slop that it's artisanal slop, but it's actually it hits a kind of like more raw nerve with me too, because it's actually like a really bad remake of the 1973 film The Wicker Man, and it starts, I think, Christopher Lee in it, and the plot is really similar. There's a very isolated place, an island, where they still worship pagan gods and all the weird details and stuff. Like, you should go find it. I think if you want to find it.
It's a folk horror film.
Yeah. Well. And Midsommar, I think, literally copied it beat by beat, but also added things like this sort of yoga lady screaming session and stuff like that. I also, for the same reasons, I don't like the 2015 remake of Suspiria, where that actress, I forgot her name, but like, I was the witch all along. And I mean, like, the older films have this unreplicable texture about them, and it's like a mix of everything. It's the film stock, it's the quality of the actors, it's also the limitations in special effects and the dialogue.
But ask yourself this: do you think if you did not watch the 1977 Suspiria, would you have liked the 2018 one?
Actually, no. I mean, it's, of course, you can never truly prove this, but no, it's they kind of make all of these things where with the kind of main character sensibility, which I really dislike. I mean, okay, I'm not going to compare the old Suspiria, but the new one suddenly becomes all about the girl, all about you, all about me, and it's not a kind of, I'm not looking at it as a kind of Mary Sue kind of thing, I mean, but it's like suddenly you got all this tension and build up, and there are these like cheesily but perfectly choreographed scenes and this like aesthetically perfect application of gore, and then it's always, I was the witch all along, I was the son. And even the theme of entitlement is there too. Like in the 2018 Suspiria, the woman comes out saying, no, actually, I was the daughter of the evil, worst, baddest bitch witch, and it's me time now. And you also see this, like, let us not go into a Star Wars hate spiral, but you also see this in The Last Skywalker, where it seems, although might be proven otherwise, but it seems that the people writing these films can't help but write themselves in it, because...
Dude, I get it now. Like, sorry for interjecting, but like, have you watched this show called Inside Job? It's like this
I haven't tell about it. Tell more about it. Yeah.
So it's like, dude, what do you spoke about the protagonist syndrome thing? Because I thought initially it was like, because some guy just said it to me like in a party or something, and I thought, okay, no, like if like a person is like a dorky or something, I don't see any point. I don't see anything to hate on it. But then like I saw it everywhere. I saw it in this like show called Inside Job. So Inside Job is like this it's like this animated TV show, like an adult TV show, wherein all conspiracies, most of them are like real, right? And like the main character is like it's such a self-insert for like the writer. There's no other way to put it. Like she's this dorky but like sort of smart. Like she's a complete girl boss, but like no one takes her seriously and everything. And like it's because when I see it, like I can tell like, okay, this is just a self-insert for the main like writer in it.
I mean, many such cases. I think this is the cardinal sin of the millennial generation, unfortunately. Yes. And as the saying goes, I was talking at a university to like a very young audience, and the conversation came to the matter of boomers, and I told them like, the boomers have no hearts, but don't forget those who come after them, Gen X and millennials, they have no brains, they have no sensibility. And I'm saying this as someone born in 1984, really. I mean, most people, my age group.
Yeah,
maybe
it's like a slop. It's just a slop-like empire, a complete empire of slop. That's it.
Slop empire. Okay. I was thinking like at least in their public interactions, most people cannot relate to each other or the world. I'm talking about millennials, cannot relate to each other or the world without some ironic pop culture reference.
Yeah, and also it's also self-deprecation in like a mental health standpoint. All of Gen Z does it as well. But I see so many like if I go to like my old high school teachers like Facebook page, it's all this memes about like mental health, or like, you know, they're reposting some really relatable meme or something, and it's like all their memes are just self-inserts on everything. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a symptom of a generation that grew up with TV and like movies where like you had these narratives you could, and I don't know, but like just all I'm saying is be careful of these millennials, because when the boomers pass on and they get the power, I think they're gonna be a hell lot worse. And
it is surprisingly also happening. Like we always hear like the boomers have the most money, but there is going to be a transfer of wealth, because that wealth does go somewhere and it goes to the millennials.
Yeah.
And I do think the whole idea of generations is useful in like categorizing people, but I think like, and yeah, of course you can't really put everyone in a box like that. But you can definitely see a stark difference between the kinds of posts, or like if I read something, I can definitely tell it has been written by someone in their between like 30s or like late or like mid 40s. And
you can definitely tell the generation. Yeah. I think like in terms of like social media content, some of the realest stuff I've seen these days comes from like a real desperate Gen Z person just like crying at the camera or complaining about it something. But I think that's like,
dude, that is crazy. Like I
think that's
just a
like,
recent thing too.
That's really genuine. Like this girl, there was like usually woman, but there's this girl crying about how insufferable the wage life is. There was another girl crying about how the Tesla car she got was inoperable basically, and she missed her old Toyota. And recently there was a girl wearing this green sweater dropping fire about the TikTok ban and everything. And I think like maybe I'm naive, but that sort of stuff like really stays with one. And I don't know.
And it's like, and have you seen that? It's like this really specific kind of, I think most of the TikTok comedians, they have this format wherein they're like, when they change clothes and they talk to themselves back and forth, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where like they're talking to themselves. And like I think what I understand it as is that like they're I think it's because it allows for a medium where they are able to engage in internal monologue. Because if you're not able to talk to yourself in your head, you want to find a medium where you can do that, whether it's like writing or like a voice or something, or like that video is like their kind of therapy. And it is surprisingly therapeutic for them, because they're talking about some mental health thing and they're like giving themselves affirmations, you're trying your best, and yet they change their tone, like they're just giving themselves sort of multiple personalities just to get something out of it from a mental health.
I mean it's the kind of weird alienating but also connecting nature of the internet. I mean you could argue that you and I at the opposite ends of the world, we're also talking to ourselves in a room, dude. But at least we got somebody else on the other end. And it's always really awkward when people, I see people in the street sometimes, especially when I go to like landmark locations in Istanbul, of which there are a lot, but I always see like in the corner someone like talking in hushed voices, trying to record, I don't know, a TikTok or an Instagram story, and it's like, hey, this place is awesome or something, but like, you got thousands of people around you. That's just, it's just
like, it's because it is I think there's I think there was like someone like Baudrillard or something, he wrote about this in his simulacra and simulation thing, wherein you are trying to commodify everything, so you commodify your reaction to something. So it's I don't think it's that deep or something, but like it's like I think the 9/11 for this kind of content was like when people were taking like TikTok videos of themselves in the during COVID, like the nurses dancing and shit, like near the fucking morgue. They were just dancing near the morgue or something. Like I think that was the peak of that kind of content. But I mean, I think it becomes so ubiquitous that because selfies at one point were kind of seen as, oh dude, this guy's just being like a dick. But then over time it changes, and I think it'll change in our generation as well, because I still find it a little weird that like people take videos of themselves in the subway, right? She makes all those edits of herself filming herself in the London Tube or something, and then other people try to copy that, and over time people will just like get used to it. But it takes balls though, I will say. Like, I don't think I could even I feel self-conscious just taking a fucking selfie in like public, but they're able to do that. Like, good for them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I got no problem like taking photographs of videos of things, but I also would feel self-conscious inserting myself in it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's become almost like this CCTV-like version of lives, at least with like, not everyone's like that, but there's a certain subset or maybe a life stage with some people where everything is like pathologically documented. Like the food you eat, the coffee is there. Oh, let's take a coffee story. And I don't know, like the end product of that, or like what the next step will be after that trend. I'm just really curious to see.
I think this like because everything is content and everything is like content consumption, right? There's infinite kinds of stuff that you can be into now. And there's more like stuff that you can consume as like a person, and also just like from a religious perspective or a cult and stuff like that. And it leaves like a really good opening for any kinds of occult doctrine to take shape. And do you know this app called Meetup?
I do not know about it. How is it?
Okay.
Or what is it?
So Meetup is this app where you can actually go and meet people who like, make like they just gather and like, they talk about random stuff, or they make events, and you can put it, it's like Eventbrite, but like just a little bit more casual, where like, there's no pressure of you coming in.
Yeah.
If anyone can like, go there, start like a just hermetic discussion group and start a cult. Like, it's that simple. To build
that has been known to happen, or is it a theoretical possibility?
I will say, like, I have been to a few of the Meetup, and like if I had like money or something, anyone could like just make a group and like, call people to it and discuss something, and you can just start a cult just like that. And that's the thing. I feel this kind of nihilism that you feel with content, like just this existential dread, which of course most millennials also talk about a lot. And even Gen Z, they talk about like I think the later Gen Z, like my kind, we use more therapy speak in day-to-day conversations more than the millennials.
Yeah.
Like, I did not know what gaslight meant until a few years ago, and when I learned about it, I thought it was just like, I did think it was a made-up word, but like it's so ubiquitous. Everyone just talks. It's the same. Later Gen Z are just the same as millennials. Just they are much more vocabulary, and they have much better vocabulary to talk about it, I guess.
I mean, aside there, just 2 days ago, and we are recording on the 20th of January 2025. 2 days ago, there was a subway race, but in one afternoon, the price of a subway ticket went from, I don't know, like $1 to $2 or something like that, at least here. And I distinctly overheard somebody saying they pressed their ticket and they saw how much the system charged. It's paid by a top-up card, and they saw how much the system charged, and they're like, I'm triggered right now.
Yeah, dude, it's like, wait, so there was a subway race? Like,
no, a raise in the subway prices.
Okay. Oh yeah, dude, there's even Uber charges and everything. Like, it's an experience, but I think
the whole way the guy said, I am triggered right now because the subway ticket was expensive, was just like a revelation. But to go back at cults and stuff and occult in the age of new media, because by the way, this is a great discussion on like media theory, societies and everything. But we kind of agreed, since this was our first talk together, we kind of agreed to talk about the rise of the occult, bro. And I think this is where we're going to go with this now. And so I did not know about Meetup. I'm an eccentric. I make a point of not using a smartphone, if you can believe it.
Okay, that's a little pretentious. Like, no one's going to judge you for using a smartphone, Mr. Kozman.
No, of course nobody will. I never started, and I know I will not be able to focus my attention. Maybe some people will, but I can't. So,
dude, but like, don't you feel? Because I feel like if you have to be culturally literate, you have to have spent some days scrolling through Instagram reels, watching someone die in an accident, and like, watching some Skibbity Ohio TikTok or some other brain rot stuff, because
I got my laptop for those. I got my laptop. I can just sit up. The only thing with the laptop is you can sit up and it's over. And I mean, it's not a point I'm gonna argue, because it's I think very rare. But I don't like doom scrolling in the morning or at night. I want like one of the reasons I never picked up the smartphone is like I want the bed to be a place to sleep in, like where you're like disconnected. But it's just me, and yeah, I mean, this stunt is done by professionals. Do not try to imitate or replicate. Yeah. I also think it's like good for my reading habit, but
yeah, I think
I read 5,000 books.
Yeah. Yeah, 5,000 books, and of course you have like gotten one-shotted by the 5,000 books, and you have to start your own cult now. That's your like.
I have been noticing like, and like for those of you who didn't know the context of the joke, we were talking about what if Altist and his meltdown. But anyways, I don't want to like harp too much on the guy, but just a broader subject.
Yes.
I have noticed this like increased popularity of formerly occult, maybe interwar era occult content, or late 19th century occult content, and it's making a comeback through these social media channels and these meeting apps, just as you said.
Yeah.
And where I live, I have noticed this type, and I'm going to describe this character to you. It's a stereotype, but like, do let me know if you've seen the likes of him in the US or Australia. There is now the same way there were like tech bros a few years ago, and they would speak about colonies on Mars and stuff. Now we see the kind of occult bro character manifesting in society, and like the precise nature of the occult bro talks about is not very relevant. But okay, so I got a 24-year-old sister, and a couple of years ago she introduced me to a friend with some other friends group of theirs or whatever, and I just happened to be in the same place as them. Comes in this guy, he's like really smart, and like, or he thinks he is, but he doesn't stop speaking about, what about the great god Baphomet? Oh, do you think the Masons worship him? What about the Rosicrucians? What about Telema? What about Aleister Crowley? He was a mountaineer, but like, it's like skipping tracks. And so I just noticed that, like, of course I had a pleasant conversation saying like, and like, but he wouldn't focus. He would say like, oh, like, this is this, and like, oh, by the way, do you think that the Russian sleep experiment was real, or like, do you think the CIA is in touch with spirits or stuff like that? But like, all this occult stuff, as you just described, has become content, and that content is, I think, being used to build up or buttress the egos of young men all around the world. Have you seen such characters?
Yes. So I've not seen them. Like, I've not met any of them, because I think it's mostly just my bias of where the places I find myself in, because I'm in probably a lot of tech pro stuff and also just graduate students and everything. Mm-hmm. But the guy that specific guy, there's a Twitter account called Dionysian Agent. He goes by Thermo. Mm-hmm. Amazing account, I will say. And he's this kind of tech bro who's also on this Gnostic kind of occult side. And he kind of, like, so EAC, right? Effective accelerationism.
Yeah.
Like, so my account, of course, is also adjacent to that. So somewhat I do sympathize with, but there's a hard fork within that where it's like, they call themselves I think it's called quantum jihad, wherein like it's
all right.
like kind of reconstructing the occult to like this techno-optimist kind of Nietzschean sense, not Nietzschean, but like more hermetic sense.
Yes.
But yeah, it's you don't, because I feel I don't think I'm a hipster or like a tech bro or something, but I do notice myself kind of liking esoteric stuff and like, going back into reading the Canaanite texts and just trying to understand. And so I definitely see the appeal, because in this day and age, you want to kind of know exactly the age of like new atheism is kind of coming to its tail end. So the only way to
dead and gone, good riddance, by the way.
Yeah, only way to reconstruct some sort of some mysticism is to just understand what the old people or like the older kind of esoteric people were thinking and construct it in a modern like kind of basilisk or AI or like this sense. So I think that leaves a lot of room for the occult to take shape. Like Nick Land, if you know, you've heard of Nick Land, right?
I have, but what precisely? I've not been a close follower, but do tell.
Yeah, so Nick Land, right? He wrote this book called Fang Noumena. So it's specifically like there was this group of people called CCRE, called Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, and I think it was in some English university. And back in the 90s, there were a lot of people. There was like this DJ who was part of it, and that DJ also became famous. And Nick Land, he wrote some stuff. And then I think Donna Haraway, like this really famous, I think Donna Haraway was part of it, maybe. So she's like a cyber feminist, and they went entirely separate routes. Even Mark Fisher, the guy who wrote Capitalist Realism, he was also a part of this little unit, and they used to just and Nick Land was a kind of like a red herring, wherein he later influenced like the effective accelerationists and Curtis Yarvin and stuff like to some extent. I think Curtis Yarvin is his own kind of can of worms. But this Nick Land, his work is really kind of occultish, right? But the funny part is that all of his stuff is really secular, because you don't need any religious backing to get to this point. You just need some sort of you just need to kind of think of all this stuff in terms of digital bits and stuff like that, and then that's it. You've reconstructed the Plato's cave simulation theory, and you've reconstructed the Abrahamic God. That's it.
Interesting. I mean, by the way, you are far more knowledgeable than me about all these names and their works, so do tell more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But personally, for example, I am also interested in mysticism and world religions, let us say. Yeah. But for me, it started from looking at from a visual angle, because I was interested in strange creatures and how to see them. So one of the few rare books I got was when I was a teenager on a trip to America. I got this book called The Golden Game, and it's a book entirely about the art of alchemy, and it showcases woodcuts and gravures from, let's say, 15th to 19th century alchemical books, and it's like a wonderful visual resource. But I never dwelled too deep into theory. Later on, in the last 10-20 years, I always had an open mind for religion. I think like even if what one believes or doesn't believe is irrelevant, but these things are undeniable parts of human heritage. So I think if you exist in society, it's up to you to know about them. And of course, I don't know nearly as much as I should or I want to know. But I've been reading the Bible, the Catholic Bible, the King James Bible, the Quran, excerpts from the Torah. But I always looked at these trying to understand the conditions of life at around the time they were written. I wasn't really looking for something to believe in. Yeah. But what you described really strikes my interest, because it seems that people are trying to create a new sort of, I wouldn't call it secular, but contemporary mysticism that can like latch on top of the chaotic state of the world as we see it, make sense of it, and maybe even provide a sense of morality, sense of morality for this technology.
Or just certainty, because you want, like I think you see that in because when I think of theology, right? You see that in even the most materialist, like communist, right? Yeah. They believe in historical materialism, but I think overall their whole structure of understanding the world is in a way is really religious, because you really have to believe that the current system as it exists today cannot sustain itself, when it has proven time and time again that capitalism can go through a lot of like baggage and still kind of work just enough to make things running. And this kind of belief, because it gives you certainty. Ultimately, I think, at least and I agree with you. I was raised religious, and my mom is also really religious, and I do have like I have taken like a baptism, not like in a Christian sense, but in a Hindu sense. So I do have just from a cultural sense, but like I do understand and try to be open about like religious experience, because ultimately it's all about certainty. You want to affirm your place in the world one way or the other, and religion allows you to feel certain through manifestation or just belief. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, you can pray hard enough and it'll happen. It's like what do you call it, random reinforcement thing, where you keep going over and over again, and you find something to believe in and you go with that.
Yeah, I mean, this was that provoked a lot of interesting responses in me. Like, first of all, I think this was once again a conversation in Turkey, and it was after one of those really, really awful school shootings in the US.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a friend. I come from a secular walk of life. This guy did too. And then suddenly the call to prayer started. And my friend said, like, these calls to prayer, they're like a force field protecting us from like crazy stuff like this shooting which just happened, which kind of said tongue in cheek, but maybe there was some, not directly a comment about Islam, but like believing in something, at least creates a sense of community, which kind of might be like an immune system against mania or psychosis. When you're left on your own for too long, you like those things creep in. One difference I noticed between this like contemporary research for like mystical / metaphysical catharsis and the old religions is that like you may know next to nothing about like the theology of a faith. Like you were just born in a part of the world, you end up going to the mosque or the church or the temple or whatever, you do the rituals. The traditional way religions and mysteries operate always had community, whereas the modern search or the quest for a synthesis, it's mostly based on the single individuals and or small groups of people. But world religions, they have billions, and that's always like struck with me. I mean, when you got billions, you can integrate the message or
and you can make your own. You can there's more, I think there's more liberty in what you want to believe in and stuff like that as well, because like transhumanism too.
That's the thing. Traditionally that wasn't an option though. You were not as free. I mean, you were you're either in or out, but like this whole new mix and match thing, that's quite new, and I don't know.
I don't think it's that new, because like I think like Catholicism, right? Catholicism, they have patron saints. Patron saints is like a holdover from the pagan time, and also even the like Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism is the founding like theological doctrine across Judaism, like Christianity, and also Islam. Even Islam is influenced by like Plato, which is crazy, right?
I always assumed Neoplatonism was a kind of way to integrate the pagan successes in philosophy and achievements in philosophy and science without calling them heretics.
No, not really. No, because so Neoplatonism, it comes from Plotinus, of course. So, but there was this guy called Iamblichus. Iamblichus was this he tried to take Neoplatonism into like a pagan route, and he called it theurgy. I think the book is called Of the Chaldean Oracles or something. Maybe I'm wrong, but Iamblichus was the kind of pagan Neoplatonist, and then Plotinus was like the Christian, or the guy who influenced future Christian and also all Abrahamic Neoplatonists. And Plato, Plato is like Timaeus. I'm surprised like a lot of people, like the Atlantis shit, that kind of annoys the fuck out of me, because like if you actually go back and read Timaeus and Critias, it is kind of clear that this guy is just talking shit about like I think he's talking about it from like a Athenian imperialism perspective, right? But I think the Atlantis part is actually not that. I read Timaeus and Critias because I wanted to understand like what he actually said about Atlantis, but that is one of the least interesting things about it, because in that he actually conjures up the idea of the demiurge, and the demiurge is like the foundational philosophy for the Gnostics. Sophia gives birth to this demiurge who creates the world and kind of traps us in this material matrix kind of thing, and all of that. But yeah, like Neoplatonism, it's like how do you put it? It's like the starter code which you can use and fork however you want. And Islamists, they took some stuff, and even Christians, they took some stuff. Catholics, they took some stuff. Even the Kabbalah and most Jews also took some stuff. And Plato, at that time when he was writing it, he believed it's okay to lie to people about whether religion exists or not. At least in his writing, he thought that was completely okay, because if it keeps order, that's completely fine for people to lie about like what gods there. And at that point, Plato was like the skeptic against the Greek gods. He thought the Greek gods were kind of fake, and he was the atheist guy, like the Fedora tipper of that time. And that's not the right way to put it, but like I think people kind of, most religions, they take the religions that become popular, they take like a contrarian stance to the mainstream worldview. And at that time, so pagan gods, so Plato was kind of like he was like the Fedora tipper for ancient Greece to some extent, but a good one. Like he was he wasn't like amazing atheist or anything, but like he was a Chad. He had like he was probably 6'2", had 8'10", was chiseled jawline, like Norwood. No Norwood 5, like complete pure hairline, like complete Chad. But yeah, he was the skeptic of that time.
Oh, well, I mean, look, I first of all, I haven't read as much as you did about any of this, so I wouldn't opine strongly because I just don't know shit.
Yeah.
But it always interested me that like transitional era. At the junction of the spread of Christianity, where against the spread of Christianity, pagan Romans tried to deploy like paganism 2.0 or like some sort of like equivalent to Christianity, which those eras always fascinated me.
Yeah. And also that's another thing, like recently I think within the EAC sphere, right, they were trying to I think because like most of EAC, they kind of think of progress as the ultimate good, like technological progress as a good thing, right, and prosperity and stuff. So ironically, they started to praise soul. I think it just happened like just exactly a year ago, where everyone was just posting praise soul, and it is kind of telling, because one of the only things that can stop the current data centers and AI and everything is like the sun, and ultimately sun is the only thing that is real that you can see. And the Roman gods, at least the Roman religion, was of Sol Invictus, and Julian the Apostate was he was the last like pagan emperor. The guy before him was Constantine, I think. Constantine, he was a complete like Christ cuck. I mean Christian, but like he converted. Right, he didn't convert most of the state to Christianity. He just recognized Christianity as an actual religion. And Julian, he went against his like predecessor, saying "fuck all that shit."
He tried to roll that back. And
it was cool though. Like Sol Invictus is pretty cool, I think.
So now you're saying that it has a recent reflection as well, because everybody's scared of the solar flare, which may.
Oh, dude, and that's another thing. Like, so this is my own personal project, right? That I was trying to do. Is like I can do it for you as well. You're born after 1970, so I can do it for you as well. But like I'm trying to kind of create my own astrological system based off of the sun. And since 1970, NOAA and also NASA, they've been taking images of the sun, and they produce these beautiful sun-up graphs.
So you're playing Haruspex with the sunspot.
Yes, exactly. So
nice
every 12 years it comes up. It like wanes and waxes and wanes. It's the same like so the same sunspot that you see right now, the way the sun looks like right now, you will see the exact same sun 12 years from now. And you can kind of, and another thing is with going back to the generation stuff, right? The funniest thing is you can actually kind of categorize the generations based on which solar cycle they were born in.
Ooh,
so you can, if you want to, I think at least because I studied like meteorology and I got interested in like heliophysics. I saw like the solar cycle 2025, and I thought like this is a much better and much more like cogent way of categorizing the generations, because it is delineating the lines much better, and it is much more, I think, let's say,
the sun does impact us closer than any star or any phase of the moon. That's really nice and interesting. But do go on, sorry.
Yeah, so like it's you can categorize the generations through which solar cycle they were born in, and it aligns well with Gen X, Gen Y, Millennials, Gen Z, because Gen Z, they were born in solar cycle, I think 24, just before this one. So right now we are near the peak of the solar cycle 25, but it came earlier, because because you can't predict the inner workings of the massive fusion reactor. You don't know when the thing is going to come, and that's the scary part, because
do we know exactly what the hell sunspots are? I mean, in science fiction literature.
Yes, there is. We do know what the sunspots are somewhat. We know that like it's like kind of magnetic, kind of opposing filament. And there's this if you are interested in this, to the viewers and listeners, there's this channel called Tamitha Skov. She's a solar heliophysicist who like explains this stuff really well. And I'm not the expert whatsoever, but from watching it, I think what it is, it's like this depression in a magnetic field, wherein like two opposite poles, they like kind of invert and like become a depression, because the sun is a big ball of like iron. It's not a big ball of fire. It's iron filaments going up and down. So so whatever is in the middle of the sun, the middle of the sun is this fusion reactor, right? That comes up sometimes, and that if it comes up in a big way, that's a coronal mass ejection, and it hits the poles, and that causes the aurora borealis and aurora australis. Then the light is the plasma is refracted and that's why you see those colors. But it's pretty interesting stuff though. Like,
well,
and another thing. So going back to sorry for cutting you off. I didn't mean to do that.
No, please go on. This is fascinating.
So I like that's why the occult stuff kind of appeals to me, because we have more information about space than ever before. Our ancestors who made all those astrological charts, you can throw all that shit away, because now we have so much more stuff to work with and build a whole new astrological system, right? And that leaves more room for these new occultists to take shape, because now you can make your own astrological system. Fuck all the people in the past. You know exactly what the sun looked like on 19th June 1995. Like build out like your own astrological system. It's like it's basically like just out there for the taking and just making whatever you want with it.
Well, it's very such a fresh perspective, and yet I'd never thought of it. And wow, that's really something. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if you look at I think the biggest blunder with regards to biologists and stuff like that is and it annoys me, because like you see so much because of conspiracy theorists, right? A lot of them, and a really good friend of mine is also he's gone down like the flat earth route, and it kind of annoys me that I try not to let it affect me, because I like evolution, I like dinosaurs, I like paleontology and stuff, right? But then I think from a science communicator perspective, it's been a huge failure for people to not kind of get how evolution actually works. Like, if you ask someone about some I fucking love science person, their best example of convergent evolution, they'll just say the crab, right? But then
now they would. Used to be the dolphin and the shark.
Yeah, dolphin. I think that's a better explanation, because I think even carcinization, it becomes like if you take it to its logical conclusion, you will start thinking of robots as the next step of human evolution, because robots are like human crabs.
I mean, carcinization, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, if anyone says it's convergent evolution, they're using a poor example, because the main clade all of these crab-like creature descends from are still arthropods. So you're already constrained by that body plan. And of course, something like a crab is gonna come up more than once. It's like something like a cat coming up numerous times in mammal evolution. And for example, in Madagascar today. Yeah, in Madagascar today, there's an animal named the fossa, which is actually a mongoose that kind of looks like a weird cat. Yeah. What I'm getting at is, if like the node of the common ancestor is not very far away, you inevitably get rhymes and repetitions. But actually, if you zoom out, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but if you zoom out, there are wilder ways. For example, you could argue that an octopus is a molluscan way to build a crab, and they're nothing alike. So yeah, it's a tangent, but yeah, that just wanted to put it out there.
It's a good tangent, because what I was trying to get to was that like that offers such a huge potential for spiritual awakening there. Because if you think about it, like convergent evolution is like, it is kind of like art. It's like Gaia just repeating certain sequences over and over again, and it is in a way artistically beautiful. And I'm surprised that there's been no like occult, like no true actual like occult uprising from that ecological perspective. And it's kind of
interesting. So like what you're doing with sunspots, what with evolution?
Yes, because we need better religions. We need more scientifically backed religions. I don't get like why people don't go to the museums and just pray to the fucking triceratops skull that is there, because I think it's such a huge opportunity. And
I think those two realms have been like forcibly divorced. Religion and science. Yeah. Like if you appreciate something scientifically or in a modern way, you're not expected to like say anything beyond, wow, that's cool. But
we should.
I mean, you do have these misguided attempts like the Canham Creation Museum and stuff like that. So but
exactly. It's fun though. Like, can you imagine how cool it would be if like you start like a whole pagan religion based off of every single, and just to honor the Precambrian ancestors who were like scurrying across the floor like eating bacterial biofilms. Like we should make our bilaterian ancestors proud by eating more bacterial biofilms.
Well, there's a great paleo artist named Ray Troll, and he did write some poems and like limericks about like dancing to the evolutionary record and stuff like that. I think like, I don't know, like given even with unlimited budgets, or like again once again, like even with like limitless resources, it would be cool. I mean, you could maybe even take parables from natural history.
Yeah.
But I think there would need to be like scripture. So like maybe first we need to create that, or whoever wants to. Like, I personally would not worship. I would worship nature in the following sense. Like, you know, if you ever go out to the outback or trekking to a forest or something, you feel that you are on hallowed ground in a way, because either you don't think about the problems you got back home, or like, but you see like the air itself shimmers. And like in that shimmer, you can, dare I even say, hear things. And that's a very personal experience. But yeah. So like the main question is like, let's zoom out. The main question is the potential for like mystical interpretation in science is vast. Yeah. But once again, because the potential is vast, most such efforts would be very individual and atomized, and they would only come across as eccentrics.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It would be difficult to scale them up to the levels of world religions, like unless like something drastic happens. But and that's not likely to happen.
Yeah, this reminds me, because I tried to do like the evolution thing. So you know, like I think because you know, like the you know what an olm is, right? The salamander that just sits in the
the Proteus, yes, Proteus.
Yeah, the Proteus. Proteus. So it doesn't move, right? In a way,
sometimes their digestive systems atrophy and everything. Yeah.
Like I think this guy, the guy who makes the real life lore, I think he had a beautiful video where like he talked about it. And then I went and read the paper, and I was thinking this salamander has actually achieved nirvana, because it is found
true.
And I think going back to like our kind of a chordate past, right? If you know the evolutionary lore, you know that like the tunicates are actually more related to us than they are to like the other
sea squirt, because they got kids with tails, and one of them never grew up and
exactly, and that is the first vertebral sin, because we should have just stayed put.
Maybe.
Because I think that's how you achieve nirvana, if we just stayed put in one place and didn't move.
And filter the goo. Yeah.
Moving is degeneracy.
Well, maybe, I mean, like, maybe you could argue that that's the sole reason why sleep evolved in all life. Well, not invertebrate life, but who knows? I mean these perspectives are incredibly fun to derive.
Like, I mean, spiders dream, so maybe dreaming is more like a feature than like a bug.
Oh, I mean, I got no doubt. In my personal view of things, I got no doubt that all life forms are sentient. Like even the things you don't think are self-aware, I think they all know. Everybody knows the deal. Everybody knows what's going on, I think. Even in my previous podcast, I used to talk about frogs and how they keep staring and they're asinine. But actually, it's a special kind of intelligence to appear that unintelligent.
And that's because like that raises the question, right? Because there's this whole thing about like rationality with regards to animals, right? Whenever we think of animals, we think of them as just acting on instinct, and like to be human is to be able to be rational, right? But animals don't make mistakes, right? Like a bird, once in a while you will probably, if it's like under the influence, if like, you know, it ate some bug or something and it got poisoned, it'll probably be under the influence, and that time it might make mistakes when it's flying a little weird. But humans are the only irrational animal, because I think we have got to a point where like our senses and all of our stuff kind of gets the better of us, and that's why we have more options to be irrational and make mistakes the way we do. Because when a leopard is biting into the jugular of an antelope, right, that comes from years of experience knowing that like that's the right spot to bite, so it can drain out all the blood, and it'll be lighter for it to carry into the tree. And it's not acting on instinct, it's more rational.
Well, I mean, like, it's an interesting way to transpose things, but I mean, there are many records of animals making silly mistakes and paying the ultimate price. Like, you remember that image of the deer that got locked horns and now it's carrying the head of the other in its horns, and so stuff like that just happens. But I mean, I get the gist of what you're trying to say. And also conversely, humans are instinctive too. I mean, if you look at a crowd of people from like high up, you could say that they're just walking on instinct, because like, ultimately in like controlled spaces, everybody's walking pathways and behavior is kind of predictable. And also people have lots of instinctive knee-jerk responses too. We just don't talk much about them. I think we are more, we got the advantage over animals that when we make a slight mistake, we usually don't die. But you can also see that quote unquote perfection in, or maybe you could see them with like the earliest hunter-gatherer societies were like, and like you look at the oldest photographs of Australian Aboriginals, and they got almost like ancient Greek type of physique where they're very fit, whatever they're doing. And then, of course, then things got kind of convoluted and upset, and I'm not going to go there. But all I'm saying is I think civilization gives us the continue points to keep making such mistakes. And and I don't know, like, so if you flip that, actually animals could be way more self-aware, and people are actually far more instinctive, but we are more sensitive to our own failings. But animals fuck up a lot too. I mean, like, we had a decorative pot in our garden when I was a kid, and the pot has a like drainage hole that tapers into a smaller point, whatever. And one day I just found a lizard there. Its head had jammed in and couldn't back off. I rescued it, but that was not a very smart. So that was true. The instincts weren't guiding it very closely there, I guess. So
that's true. I stand corrected there. I was thinking of it like maybe I was just being very anthropocentric. That's why I thought that and I was projecting just rationality onto everything, whether it's probably mostly just instinct.
It was a great way to raise up our thoughts. So no damage done there.
The occult has to arrive from somewhere.
Yeah. So by the way, with all this mysticism now, kind of like the search for mysticism in at least a certain segment of young people in the developed and the developing world, it is there. I can see it in Turkey too. You can astrology is more popular than ever, and in some ends it even dovetails with nationalism. Like in Turkey, there's like a huge movement among younger people for pan-Turkism and Turanism, and there are actually some authors who are. So here's what happens: there have been some folklore researches on ancestral Turkic people, but they're very, very, very meager. What these modern authors do is they take those up, kind of conflate them. Or I'm just paraphrasing here, but they try to kind of rebuild a kind of ancient Turkic pantheon with multiple gods or world spirits. And they're they're unpacking a very limited information set and expanding it into a sort of new quasi-incipient religion called Turanism or Tengriism. And a lot of people, at least young people, at least in some parts of their lives in cities, are showing interest in it, because for them, in the local sense, it's a way of believing in something which is the future of the nation, believing in something without having their lives constrained by the impositions of conventional Islam, which even in a secular country like Turkey can be quite severe. And also, I think, something came up. Okay.
I just
feeling. Indo-Europeanism. Yeah. So anyways, what I'm getting at is these searches for mysticism ultimately kind of turn into a trad fate 2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, it does.
And in the United States, you can see that with these guys who are otherwise conservative. Maybe they started out as conservative Protestant, but they suddenly find a new life in orthodoxy, or they reconvert.
Even just white nationalism has a huge turnover with pagans.
Yeah, what do you make of those?
I think it's much more on brand if you are racist to, I think, be more pagan, because then you have some sort of, because Christianity is really against it's against racial discrimination in a way, right? So if you want to be pro for your people and stuff, I think logically you would gravitate towards a pagan kind of worldview, because it kind of reaffirms how real your race is. I think that's why they But there's also like another faction that is more Christian and more racist in that sense as well, and they try to
Deus Vult and all that.
Yeah, Deus Vult, like that kind of stuff. Like there's those kinds of like Nick Fuentes kind of people who are like like unapologetically Christian, of course, but they try to bend stuff to racial lines to fit their racist agenda or something in a way. And it's
I think bending and fitting is like
it's like a cop out. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like you have to just accept that like you are being like against your religion in a way.
Yeah, but I mean, look, these kinds of people, they're like, at least I'm talking about Nick Fuentes, they're in the politics game, and like if the zeitgeist shifted, he could be an environmentalist the next day. It's just that how much power you can get. It's about like how forceful you can be with your message and like,
but I think the reconstructive religions, like Swedoism, the link that I just sent, right? It's like Indo-European religion. It was pretty, how do you put it? Most Indo-European religions, they share like a kind of founding myth where there was like Manu and Emo, and like one of the twins is like sacrificed, and that makes most of the people. I remember in like Manusmriti is how do you put it? In Hinduism, it's like it's the work that kind of reinforces the caste system. It's really, I think like Nietzsche talked about it in his work as well. In Manusmriti, there's I think it's Manu that like whose body and stuff turns into people. And if you reconstruct it back far enough, you can get something like Swedoism, where like you're trying to reconstruct what the original Indo-Europeans used to think. And I think that stuff I cannot, as long as it's more universalist, I think it's fine because it's more inclusive of people, regardless of what kind of
background they're from. Oh well, we certainly live in interesting times, and all these confluence of this confluence of science, social media, and the desperation becoming more visible in certain world events, and like we're living in interesting times, and I don't think the collapse is about, but it's about to get more interesting, and in some ways.
We always are living in the end of history, bro. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. And your perspectives were really like nice and interesting. A lot of stuff I did not know or read deeply about. Thanks for like sharing it with us. It's been nearly an hour and a half. Like great conversation, by the way. I mean, like we segued from media theory to films and film appreciation to our childhoods to this present day search for a new hermetic mysticism, and like it's been an interesting perspective, very interesting. Thanks for sharing. Any closing thoughts, and before I offer mine? And
I mean, it's there's a lot of it's an open world. You can make your cult if you want to. Start a cult, go buy some land, start a cult, like build your commune. It's and there's so much more stuff for you to work with if you want to make a cult right now. So this is a call to action for you to make your own cult, I guess.
One thing I've noticed, I've known several experiences, not with cults, but like alternative living communities where like people bought land and like started afresh. I think you need a critical mass of people. If you're too few, what happens inevitably is that this kind of like village huffs start taking force, and it doesn't matter how educated you are, where you're from, these always happen. So I know in these few cases where like several people, it wasn't like a cult, but like they had a set of principles, like, we're never gonna watch TV, we're never gonna give into mass media, we're gonna eat ecologically and stuff. So they actually pooled their life savings and got some land and stuff and started living there together.
And also, like, I think like if that's your initial reason for doing that, the magic and flair, all that stuff goes away when like you're actually have to like farm. Because I think that's where people
when you have to like physically live in a small isolated place, inevitably these like the most petty village huffs and feuds start taking place, and like from that community I was talking about, like nobody's talking to each other. Like they literally drive to the supermarket now, and because the place has been built up around their paradise, they drive to the supermarket, they don't talk to each other, and it's another story. So if anyone wants to start a cult, I think you have to have critical mass and make it urban, so people also have like some like place to get away to and then come back, they can't be on all the time.
And like And also like practice better cognitive security when if you know that like your cult members are going to question whether you're the actual messiah or something. You need to have like a good reason. Like people are online, they can look up anti-cult network, they can look up like they know that you're not like, don't make grand assumptions about the world. People are smart enough to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot be it's kind of counterproductive to be like the charismatic leader. You should
yeah,
there should be like more division of power, and by this I mean like more like from a communal building perspective. And it's not like when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about in like a communal building perspective. If you're trying to help your community, like it's better to not insert yourself, just like authors shouldn't insert themselves in protagonist syndrome in their movies. So try to remove yourself and you should be better. So.
Yeah, I think this is also a good management tactic, but like you should be like kind of stupid and quiet and in the corner, and you could have a vizier or like an enforcer figure to like do the rah-rah stuff for you. But also like you mentioned community work, and like if you're gonna start a cult, at least do a food drive, like actually help actual people.
Yes.
God damn, when I think about it now, cult in an urban context, there were a few. Like in Turkey, like 15 years ago, there was this self-help guru, and turns out he was like a self-help consultant for empowered female managers and like
like NXVIM.
Not that harsh, but this guy was like doing a sort of more softcore Turkish Nexium stuff. He was basically getting all these CEOs, and these were women of like who are like in like really high positions of corporate power. He was making them like divorce their husband, like give him money and land, and he wasn't really like, as far as we know, he wasn't using them or abusing them sexually that much, but like he was like making them fall in love with him. And oh god, it was I mean, by the way, as I will say that sometimes there are these charismatic people who are just in the right place and at the right time, and like in America you can see that a lot. Like there was a documentary called Holy Hell, and plus another one like Osho, this character. Ooh, a lot of people. I don't know.
Osho was kind of interesting because his like when he mostly like recruited engineers and like doctors and stuff. So their cult was doing pretty well from like a organizational perspective. They were able to build...
it was really slickly managed, like a yuppie cult almost.
Yeah, and then like I think the reason why like it fell off is because of like one of his simps, one of his like orbiters, she like got power hungry and like went and did like this terrorist attack where she gave everyone salmonella or something, and that caused a chain of events where his power just went away.
Yeah, I mean, I think like when you gotta be careful when you're appointing a vizier. But the last I checked, I think the Osho movement had a side branch in somewhere in Southeast Asia where they actually stayed low key, and now it's kind of become another branch or something like that. I don't know.
Like also that's what you have to also worry about. Like cults, if you start one, there's going to be forks. Like if I think the Waco, I think not Waco, but like the branch Davidians were like I think like that was an offshoot of an offshoot.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So you can't predict how large groups of people are going to react to stuff, and if they want to take it another way, they will.
Yeah, and as we spoke at the beginning of this podcast, sometimes like some weird thing who's like a branch of a fork of a branch of a mystical fork or something. When the conditions are right, it can just layer up and become big again. All right. Thanks for a great conversation, Theo. And I'm sure this won't be the last. And any last pointers, or like if you want to shill out your
feel free to follow my little meme page, Tuxedo Manlet.
Okay.
Tuxedo Manlet. And my Twitter is Tartoraptor.
Okay.
Yep. And thank you so much, CM Kozman. It's I'm still kind of I still think you're a Fed, but I think you're a good one.
If I was a Fed, I would only work for the Turkish National Intelligence because my allegiance to Turkey is pretty strong. Anyways, great conversation. Thanks for your time, and to everyone listening, I hope you had a great time. Comment and maybe subscribe to Theo's social media, and also if you haven't, subscribe to this channel or maybe even donate on Patreon. Thank you for your time. Thank you all for listening, and have a nice day. Goodbye.